This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 224, The Index Card Business Plan, an interview with Brian Margolis.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and today I want to talk about a new productivity system that I bumped into the other day. It's called the Index Card Business Plan, and it's authored by a fellow named Brian Margolis, our guest, and it's something what he calls the pillar system, and it's a way of simplifying your strategy and magnifying your results. It's very well focused towards salespeople. It's so easy to get busy doing things that don't really add to the bottom line. I know I'm guilty of this myself, and Brian has a very simple way that you can be much more effective and much more productive in your day. So with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Brian. Are you ready to babble?
I'm ready.
Brian, you got a new book out, right? Called the Index Card Business Plan, the Sales Pros and Entrepreneurs. You mailed me a copy without even asking my permission, or not much, if I remember
Sorry about
right.
that.
I read it a couple weeks ago, and I absolutely loved it. Where were you? Where were you at the new year? Because I was looking for somebody just like you.
Well, I'm glad it's out there now.
This book is really about organizing yourself, how you get this idea and you kind of focus in on it and you execute on that and you become successful. But over time, you start adding to it to improve it, adding to it to improve it. And next thing you know, your whole life is just filled with lots of stuff. And it's hard to stay focused on the important things. This book kind of addresses that.
Yeah, I mean, the natural order of things. And when I say the natural order of things, I mean your life, your relationships, the desk you're probably sitting at right now, right? Everything, your computer, your laptop, all the programs on it, the natural order of things is to move from simple to complex, right? And that, believe it, in my past life as an environmental scientist, that was the case too, right? Systems tend to always move toward complexity. And that is the natural order of things. And that's fine, but it's hard to go in reverse. It's very hard to simplify things.
Right? Isn't that what in physics they call? Isn't that in physics what they call entropy? Right? You go from order to disorder.
Yeah, actually, right, and it never stops, from what I understand, right?
Right.
But listen, I don't think you need a degree in physics to know what we're talking about, right? Everyone's life, everyone's car. It's just, I mean, I love when people come up to me and they tell me how simple they have this idea and it's so simple, and I'm like, multiply it by 10, right? Because it's gonna get complex. But what's really cool is if you study or just see innovation, whether it's in your own life or out there in the real world, the big breakthroughs or the big advances are when we take complex things and we simplify them, right? Now, that's not easy to do, but when you do it, the rewards are extraordinary, right? In fact, there's a book by a guy named Richard Koch. He's one of my favorite business thinkers in the world, a multi-billionaire. He's not very well known. Some people, you either know him or you don't. And he literally has a book called Simplify. And he basically talks about how the biggest businesses in the world, the most successful things, have taken something complex and simplified them, right? Like Uber. You know, what did Uber do? It took out a few steps in the process, right? What did the iPad do? It took out all that technology and it made it simple, right? Remember computer phobia? Now we have... I mean, that used to be the thing. If there was a computer, we were scared of it. We didn't want to learn it. You know, my daughters could use the iPad before they could spell, right?
Right.
And so there's a lot of, it's not easy to simplify things, but when you do, the rewards are extraordinary.
So that was the impetus of this book?
You know, it was the impetus of this book, the system inside of it. And again, it wasn't like I sat there and I said, okay, how do I simplify things? To me, it was just, it was a necessity. I mean, what I now know is I was normal, but at the time I didn't think I was normal. When I went from being a scientist to being an entrepreneur, you know, I thought I had trouble concentrating. I thought I just had too much to do. I thought I was the only one who was reactive and distracted. And I'm really patient zero. I mean, this is something over the years of being an entrepreneur that I did for myself. And by the way, when I say entrepreneur, I mean, you might as well use Sales Pro right in there, because the line between being an entrepreneur and a sales professional is it's a blurry line, right?
Yep.
It's about 80% overlap on both sides.
Yep.
Pretty much the only difference is who signs the check, right? But but yeah, so this was something I worked out for me, and I think we all try to get simplicity, right? We reorganize our closets, we feel good, things like that. We throw things out. But yeah, the impetus of this book was twofold. One was, the idea of just having a strategy, period, and I'll talk about that. But the other one was the strategy. Is this the best strategy in the world? Is it the most, is every T crossed and every I dotted, and is it the perfect thing to do at the perfect moment on every day? Of course not. But I always say this is the best strategy you'll actually do, right? It's simple enough that you will actually keep up with it.
Well, I think the thing that's seductive about this is like the title, this idea of having a simple index card. How'd you get on that?
That was pretty simple for me, because I actually use an index card, right? I'm I guess a low tech, high check kind of person, right? as one of my mentors used to say. But the idea of running my business from an index card, of keeping things simple. To this day, I still use my index card. I still cross things off. That's how I run my week. It was kind of funny. I did an event down at well, you don't know where I live, but I did it in the town over, and a big event, bunch of advisors, bunch of people, pros, all that kind of stuff. And I bring my nephew there, and my younger nephew to kind of tape it and do all the audio video stuff. I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And it was funny because when I said index card, it was kind of like, first, what's an index card, right? And then you tell them what an index card is, and you can't find where to download it. But the index card for me was just something that, it was how I ran my business. It was simple.
So let's talk about what do we put on these index cards? How do we simplify our lives, and how do we do it?
Well, I think let me take a step back. Let me take a step back, because to do it, we have to know what our goal is, right? And I think there's a world filled with salespeople. There's a world filled with salespeople who their current level of success is based on two things. It's based on their sales skills, their talents, their skills, their talents, whether those are learned or natural, and you combine that with their work ethic, and you mix those up, and that's their current level of success. But what I think is missing, and what I've learned over the years is missing for most, is having an actual strategy. We'll talk about simple in a second, but most people don't even have a strategy, Patrick. And the way I would tell your audience to determine, do I have a strategy? It's kind of simple. Whatever you're doing right now, when you're listening to this, pretend your assistant came up to you, or you got a notice in your inbox and it said, all of your appointments for the day are canceled. Every single person canceled, right? Oh, and by the way, your inbox is at 0. I took care of all your administrative tasks, and your email is broken. Nothing's coming in for the rest of the day. So now you have whatever time is left in the day to work on your business, right? There's no more admin. There's no more email. There's no more appointments. Well, what would you do next? And if you don't know exactly what you would do next, now you might not feel like it. You might not want to do what you need to do. But if you don't know what that is, in my opinion, you don't have a strategy, right? You're waiting for the world to tell you what to do. You're waiting for your calendar, your inbox. And so I think the first thing is to understand, to have a strategy. Then, of course, in my opinion, let's keep it simple, right? Let's get this thing down onto an index card. So what goes on an index card? I didn't forget your original question, I promise.
I wasn't going to let you go.
I'd be a good politician. Right?
Wasn't going to let anyway.
Do everything but answer the question. So what goes on the index card are what I call your pillars, okay?
Pillars.
And your pillars, right.
Right.
So sometimes people refer to this as the pillar system. And what a pillar is, it's an activity meeting very specific criteria, and we can walk through that when executed on consistently has a disproportionately positive impact on the health and growth of your business. Now, that's the official definition. What does that mean to you? It means this. Your pillars are those things that you control, by the way. You decide whether they get done or not. Okay? They're not goals. They're not things you hope gets done. They're not things you're trying to get done. They're things that you control whether they're done or not. That when you cross off, when you hit all your pillars for the week, when you do all those critical activities, you know you had a great week. And that's an interesting place to be, right? Because let's be honest, as people who work in the results-based economy, and that's what we are.
That's what we are.
Sales pros,
Yep.
entrepreneurs, right? Nobody tells us when we're done, right? Nobody tells us when we're done. And for that reason, because we don't have Fred Flintstone, we don't have the bird squawking and we can slide down the dinosaur and our work shift is over, we tend to take this stuff home with us. We never stop thinking about it. There's always more to do. The nice thing about these pillars is once you cross them off, you did what you had to do for the week outside of your what we call urgent and significant tasks, right? The things you have to do or there's an immediate consequence like your appointments and stuff. You pretty much had a great week. So your pillars go on the index card.
So let's do some example pillars.
Sure. So would you rather have me give you some examples or you want me to tell you what a pillar is, kind of give you the criteria?
What do you think's best?
I think we should give the criteria, but thanks for asking. Sorry to set you up there, Patrick.
No, I'm here. I'm very open.
So it's not just it's not just a glorified to-do list. Okay, it's not just a glorified to-do list. The place I like to start, and I know you saw this in the book when you were reading it. I know we talked about that previously. This idea that everything you do during the day falls into one of three categories, right? And obviously this is an adaptation from Stephen Covey's time management quadrants, but I've even simplified that, right? I can't help it. I've gone from 4 to 3. But everything you do basically falls into one of three categories. Category 1 is what I call your insignificant activities. And these insignificant activities, they can range, all the way from setting up your fantasy football team, right, which I think we all know doesn't make you money, doesn't produce, all the way up to, things that do have to be done. They just don't have to be done right now, right? They're not priorities. That's kind of that insignificant bucket. The other activity category is the urgent and significant, meaning these are things that are significant to your income, they're significant to your production or your goal, and they're urgent. And the reason they're urgent is because if they're not done at or by a certain time, then there's an immediate consequence. So, as a sales pro or a salesperson, if you don't have, if you have a 2:00 call today with a prospect, well, I would call that urgent and significant, right? Because it has to be done at 2:00. And if you don't do it at 2:00, if you decide you're too tired and you don't show up for the call, well, there's an immediate consequence, right?
Right.
The good news is we're wired for this, man. We're good. I don't deal with many professionals who come to me and say, Brian, I have all these great opportunities, all these great prospects, all these great meetings, and I just get tired after lunch and I don't feel like going, so I don't, right? That's not really a problem for most professionals. If something has an immediate consequence, we handle it, right? It's why we stayed up in college till 3 a.m, right? We had 6 weeks to do a project, and it's due the next day, and we're up till 3 o'clock in the morning doing it. Where the issue is, and where the biggest opportunity for growth is in what I call the pro category, or the proactive significant. And this is where we're going to spend probably the rest of the time here talking about this in pillars. These are the things that are significant to your income, to your production, but there's no immediate consequence, right? If you don't do them, there's no immediate consequence. And the reason I call it the pro category beside the proactive is that this is also where we tend to procrastinate, and it's also where people go from being amateurs to being pros. mean, if you think about your current business, anyone who's listening to this, and you think about where your current issues are, what your problems are, I almost guarantee, 95% of them fall in this category, right? They're things that don't have an immediate consequence. Things like prospecting, right? Things like working on your messaging, getting better, things like your follow-up system.
Yeah, I can really relate to this because these are the problems I face all the time, Brian. I know I got to get my podcast out every Tuesday, and I'm vigilant about making that happen. And if I got an appointment with a client, I never miss it. But following up on clients, which is something I tell people they need to do all the time, even I find myself struggling with that because does it really matter if I follow up with them today or tomorrow?
Well, let me give you something everybody can relate to, Patrick. So if you and I take a lunch break after this podcast, right? And let's say I go to a restaurant and I get a triple bacon cheeseburger, right? With extra cheeseburger, extra bacon, extra everything.
That'll kill you.
Right. Well, let's pretend I have that for lunch, or I could order a kale salad with no dressing, right?
Right.
And I could eat like the deer outside my house. Okay. Regardless of what I choose, let's be honest. Am I going to look any different in the mirror tonight?
No.
That's the problem, right? If I work out today or don't work out today, I'm not going to look any different in the mirror. That's why these are pro things, because they're significant. They drive everything in terms of our health, our fitness, and of course, when we're talking about business. But because there's not an immediate consequence, we tend to procrastinate on it. Does that make sense?
Right.
That's why that's what the pillars are designed to do. The pillars are designed to take care of this, right? That's what they're for. So let's dive into this criteria, right? What is a pillar? Number one, it's a proactivity. Number two, it's a high leverage activity. Number three, it's an action or a predictable result, meaning you control whether it gets done.
Yep.
Number four, it's something you already know how to do effectively. Number five, you can measure it weekly. And number six, it's not already a habit. And when you kind of ask yourself a series of questions, which I go through in the book and I go through in the report, and you run through that criteria, what you come out with the other side when you go through all the steps are your customized pillars, right? What you have to focus on that week.
I like that. And this is something in the book that I really found interesting, was that these are things that aren't naturally habits of mine, but they're things that I know are going to add value to my bottom line, and they're things I actually know how to do. Right.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of the funny part.
It's not like I got to go train, or something like that. Although that might be a pillar, right?
That's right.
That
a learning pillar.
That's right. Continual learning. But that's what I thought was really interesting about these, was because it would jog my mind every day. Because you look at this card every day, I think, right? If I remember right.
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and you're going, oh yeah, I need to go do that. I need to go do that. I need to go do that. And it's not someone making me do that. It's me making me do that.
Yeah, I mean, I know in the book I have an example of a client of mine that, and she was not an amateur. She was already a seasoned vet, and, she got 40% year-over-year growth, and she lost 35 pounds in 1 year, and she had 4 pillars, right? That's it. That's all she focused on every week was these 4 pillars, and as long as she hit those 4 pillars, everything else took care of itself.
Wow.
She had to schedule a certain number of meetings, which, had a criteria she had to hit, what counted as a meeting, what didn't. She had to send 5 what we called non-sale touches to her existing clients. These were things that kind of kept her top of mind, which was important in her industry. She spent 2 hours a week sharpening the axe, working on her messaging, working on the skill set that she identified, and she worked out 3 times a week. And basically, she stuck week in and week out with those 4 pillars. And that drove, I remember talking to her boss, and she was like, her boss was, what happened here? And I said, you wouldn't believe me if I told you.
So
you think there'd be this long, complicated business plan, right?
These don't look like stretch goals here.
No. It's amazing is that we pretty much know what we have to do. We pretty much know what we have to do. The other thing is giving ourselves the permission to do it. I think when it comes to developing new skills, for us to budget an hour during the week to work on skills, we don't see that as work sometimes, Patrick, right? We see that as something we do if we have the time, right? If we have the time, I'll get better at copywriting. If I have the time, I'll work on my message. If I have time, I will, fill in the blank. And that's where pillars come in. They make sure you're doing that stuff consistently.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it, love it.
And by the way, I do appreciate that you read the book from cover to cover. That was I always love hearing that.
No, I was fascinated by the book, and I started building my card, and I have to admit I haven't finished it. I need to put that on another card, baby.
Yeah, that's a to-do list.
I guess so. Yeah. I've got the book right here in my hand. The thing is about this book, it's really easy to read. It's not. It's only 100 pages, but it's really rock solid in here. It's a small book, but
yeah.
I think that's what I actually like about the book is it's not full of fluff. It's not. It's very, very practical.
I don't think I could have a book called The Index Card Business Plan that was 422 pages. So I think that would have exposed me, right?
Yeah. I like it, and I like the fact that you just kind of sent it. You kind of sent it to me. I think you did ask for permission. Would you be interested in reading this if I sent it to you? And I said yes.
I asked for your address. Yeah.
So is that on a pillar, or is that just something you do naturally?
No, that's one of my pillars. So one of my pillars right now in the stage I'm in is, I launched this book, so I'm trying to get the book out there, and I'm trying to build up a different kind of clientele with this book, open up some new avenues, and I have a pillar every week that I have to prospect and message for 3 hours a week, and what that does is that forces me. I have an Excel sheet that's one of my reference docs, which I talk about in the book. That pillar forces me to go to that reference document, and that reference document shows me, right, all the things I need to, I could be doing, prospecting who I could be prospecting. And so, yeah, I spend three hours every week religiously prospecting. I don't care my schedule right now is booked. And guess what? That's when you got to keep prospecting, right?
Right.
That's when you got to keep prospecting. So I don't just prospect when I need to. I prospect consistently, and that's one of the things that the pillars have really helped me with.
Awesome. How can people find you, Brian, online?
Probably the easiest thing, go to my website, productivitygiant.com. And you can see any links I have to social are there. You can contact me there. You can call me there. You can, anything you want.
Can they buy the book there?
They can click to buy the book there. Yep. It'll take them, there's a link. It'll take them to Amazon. They can grab the book. They can grab a free report. If they're not ready to part with their money, they can grab a free report and decide if they want the book.
Oh, so what's in the free report?
It's basically the book. It's basically the first part of the book with a worksheet attached to it at the end, kind of like a 5-step worksheet on how to identify your pillars.
Excellent.
So there's a lot there. There's a lot in that report and that worksheet.
That's great. Brian, thanks for visiting us here in Sales Babble. Hey, I really appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate you having me, and I hope to return the favor one day.
To connect with Brian and to get access to his book, The Index Card Business Plan for Sales Pros and Entrepreneurs, you can find it in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com. I'm starting to employ this system, and I'm really excited about that. How about you? I would love to hear if any of you folks were thinking about maybe doing something like this, and if so, what are the results that you have found? If you got a question, got a comment, don't hesitate to reach out and to contact me. You can go to the homepage at salesbabble.com and click the Babble Me button. And there you can actually find our archives and over 200 plus episodes on sales and sales advice. Check it out. So that's all I've got for today. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.